Have you ever stood on the edge of your own Jordan? Not a river of water, but of fear. A crossing not made with feet, but with faith. Behind you, the wilderness, years of wandering, of dry prayers, of dreams half buried in dust. Before you, the promise, something better, something holy, something true. But between you and it, the water rages, deep, cold, impossible. It dares you to move. It dares you to believe. This is the moment of trembling. This is the space between almost and finally, between not yet and now. And it's in this in-between that your soul must decide. Do you freeze in fear or step into the flood? There comes a moment in every life where the next step feels like death, not of the body but of the self, the death of certainty, the end of what's familiar, the silence before the shout, the stillness before the sea splits. God never promised the river would be calm. He never said the water would part before your foot touched it. Sometimes the water parts only when your heel hits it. Only when you walk in with trembling limbs and reckless trust. Only when your obedience outruns your logic. You may feel the chill of the unknown rising up your ankles. You may feel the mocking voice of reason telling you to turn back. At least in the wilderness, you knew what to expect, it says. But your spirit knows better. It remembers the cloud by day, the fire by night, the manna in the morning. Your spirit remembers the one who never left you even when you wandered. The Jordan is not your enemy, it's your threshold. It's not a punishment, it's a passage. And God never calls you to stand at the river's edge just to watch it rage. He brings you there to see it part. But listen, breakthrough is never birthed in comfort. It begins in conflict, not with others but within. The war between flesh and spirit, between what you see and what you believe. That's why the Jordan intimidates. It forces you to confront everything you've leaned on except God. The people of Israel had wandered for 40 years. Their sandals wore thin, their memories faded, a whole generation buried in desert sand. And now, with tired hearts and hopeful eyes, they stood once more before the river. And God said, "Go." He didn't offer a bridge. He didn't provide a boat. He said, "Step." And when they did, when the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant placed their feet in the torrent, the waters stopped, piled high upstream. Dry ground appeared beneath their feet, like the promise rising from the deep. And the people passed through, not by strength, not by strategy, but by trust. What if your river isn't an obstacle but an altar? What if it's the place God chose to reveal His power? What if the very thing you fear is the thing God will use to deliver you? Don't despise the river. Don't curse the flood. It's there to remind you that the promise will never be reached in your own might. It will only come through a holy dependence. Many stand at their Jordan and retreat. They settle for the wilderness because at least it's predictable. But you weren't called to circle mountains. You were called to possess them. You weren't formed in the fire to wither in fear. You were forged to walk forward. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And He doesn't lead you to deep waters to drown you. He brings you there to part them. This moment right now may feel like the edge, but it's not your end, it's your beginning. A holy brink where heaven leans in and the earth holds its breath. One step forward and everything changes. The enemy will shout from the shore. He'll remind you of your past, of your failures, of every time you tried and sank. But lift your eyes, child of God. Look beyond the current. See the promise. Hear the voice of the one who speaks to waves and wind alike. Do not be afraid. I am with you. And if God is with you, the river cannot stop you. If God is for you, the current cannot sweep you away. So step, not because the water is calm, but because your God is faithful. The Jordan stands only as long as you stay still. But the moment your faith moves, so does the river. And on the other side, stones of remembrance, fields of promise, and a future soaked in grace. This is not a word of convenience. This is a word of deliverance. It won't tickle your ears or soothe your ego. It will cut, it will cleanse, it will set you free. Because the God who speaks does not whisper to comfort. He thunders to awaken. He does not stroke your fears. He consumes them in fire. This is not a gentle knock. It's the roar of heaven shaking the door off its hinges. The Word of God is not safe. It is not soft. It is not sanitized. It is wild and holy and terrifyingly good. When it comes, it does not fit within your understanding. It expands it. When it speaks, it does not confirm your plans. It destroys them and replaces them with something eternal. And in this moment, that word is aimed at the dry places of your life, at the places where you've walked in circles, at the desert you've called normal. It does not say, stay comfortable. It says, prepare to move. It does not coddle your confusion. It crushes it with clarity. To every soul that has cried out in the night, this word comes as a storm of mercy. To every heart that has asked if the promise was real, this is heaven's response. Yes, it is, and it is nearer than you think. When God prepares to move, He doesn't do it in shadows. He doesn't slip in through the cracks. He comes blazing with light. His voice echoes like 1,000 waterfalls, drowning out doubt. He speaks in a way that shakes the earth and stills your soul. Do you feel it? That trembling deep within your spirit, that's not anxiety. That's the sound of chains loosening. That's the sound of walls beginning to crumble. That's the sound of the ground breaking beneath your prison, preparing to birth a path of freedom. Because breakthrough doesn't tiptoe in, it comes crashing. Like dawn over darkness, like rivers over rocks, like thunder over silence. When God speaks, the wilderness cannot hold you any longer. Its grip weakens, its lies unravel, its threats lose power. You've walked through desert seasons thinking it was your destiny. You've settled in the dry places, setting up camp where you were meant to pass through. But God is calling you up and out. He never intended the wilderness to define you. It was meant to refine you. Don't mistake the delay for denial. Don't confuse the process with punishment. The wilderness was never the destination. It was preparation. The heat shaped your hunger. The silence trained your hearing. The thirst drew you closer to the source. And now the word comes, not as a suggestion, but as a command. Rise, rise from the dust, rise from disappointment, rise from fear. This is the time, this is the place, and this is the word that breaks the cycle. But you must hear it not just with your ears, but with your spirit. Let it shake you awake. Let it disrupt every lie you've believed. Let it overturn every altar you've built to comfort and self-preservation. This word doesn't come to negotiate with your past. It comes to sever it. It comes with a sword. It draws a line, and it says, choose. Choose to believe again. Choose to trust again. Choose to step forward even when you can't see the end. This isn't a word to make you feel better. It's a word to make you free. And freedom, real freedom, always costs something. It costs your excuses. It costs your fear. It costs your control. But in return, it gives you everything. It gives you identity. It gives you inheritance. It gives you access to promises that were never lost, only waiting. The enemy doesn't fear your comfort. He fears your calling. He doesn't fear your survival. He fears your surrender, because surrendered hearts shake kingdoms. Surrendered lives tear down strongholds. So God is calling you not to be comfortable, but to be consecrated, set apart, marked holy, not for religion, not for rules, but for purpose, for presence, for power. He is calling you to burn, not out, but bright. to shine, not with your strength, but with His glory. And when that light breaks through, the darkness must flee, not because you are strong, but because He is, not because you have the answers, but because you carry the presence of the One who is the answer. You are not being called to convenience. You are being called to courage, to walk where it's risky, to speak when it's costly, to believe when it's painful. This is the word of the Lord, not a lullaby, but a war cry, not a pause, but a push, not a sedative, but a summons. So rise, child of God. Stand tall, even if your knees shake. Speak boldly, even if your voice cracks. Move forward, even if the ground feels unstable. Because this word was made for you, and you were made for this moment. Heaven is not silent, heaven is roaring, and it's calling your name. Don't miss the sound. Don't ignore the fire. Let it burn away every doubt. Let it break every chain. Let it lead you out of the wilderness, across the waters, and into the land of promise. The word has come, and it will not return void. Consecrate yourselves, the voice declares, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. Those words still ripple across the centuries, whispering through the dust of time, calling you to the sacred. To consecrate is not merely to prepare, it is to set apart what has been ordinary, to anoint the very soil of your heart, to ready yourself for something only God can bring. It is to step out of the noise and into the hush of heaven's presence. This is not a suggestion. It is an urgent summons to awaken, to shake off the weight of doubt and unbelief. Before God moves, He asks for surrender. Before the breakthrough comes, He calls for separation. Like a sculptor clearing away the stone before revealing the form hidden within, God calls you to strip away what cannot enter the promised land. You cannot carry every weight across this threshold. Some things, old wounds, old fears, old versions of you, must stay behind. Consecration is the cutting. It is the refusal to settle for half light when full radiance is coming. When Joshua spoke those words, the people stood on the brink of a future they had only imagined. They had heard of a land flowing with milk and honey, but they had tasted only manna and wilderness dust. They had walked for decades, circling the same mountains, tracing the same worn paths under the relentless sun. Yet now the voice of the Lord was telling them to prepare, because tomorrow would not be like today. Consecration means saying yes to the unseen. It means purifying your intentions, your mind, your heart. Not because God demands perfection, but because He desires alignment. When you are aligned with His purpose, the impossible no longer feels distant. It becomes inevitable. When He calls you to prepare, He is not asking for rituals, He is asking for readiness. There is a divine rhythm to the way God moves. Before the Red Sea parted, He commanded His people to step forward. Before fire fell on Mount Carmel, Elijah rebuilt the altar. Before Jesus performed miracles, He called for faith. Preparation always precedes power. The soil must be broken before the seed can grow. The vessel must be emptied before it can be filled. Consecrate yourselves, set apart your thoughts, clear the clutter. Let go of the voices that say it will never happen. Shut the door on the doubt that tells you God has forgotten. The Lord does not speak idle promises. If He says He will do amazing things, He will. He is not a man that He should lie. He is the same God who spoke stars into existence, who carved rivers into stone, who knows the number of hairs on your head and the shape of your soul. Think of the Israelites as they stood on the banks of the Jordan. Their clothes were worn, their feet calloused, their hearts heavy with memory. Some of them were children when they first walked out of Egypt. Now they were elders, weathered by 40 years of wandering. They knew disappointment, they knew waiting. Yet even after all that time, the promise had not expired. It had not faded. God had not changed His mind. Can you feel that truth pressing against your own story? You may have been waiting for years. You may have seen doors close and paths twist into dead ends. But when God declares tomorrow, time bends to His command. Delay does not mean denial, it only means that heaven is still aligning the pieces. Consecration is trust in motion. It is saying, I believe you enough to prepare even if I can't yet see. It's cleaning the room before the guest arrives, even when the horizon shows no sign of footsteps. It's filling the jars with water, like at the wedding in Cana, even before the wine has flowed. It's believing that tomorrow will hold something you cannot yet comprehend, because God is the one writing tomorrow. We live in a culture that demands instant answers, instant blessings, instant breakthroughs. But the kingdom of God moves at the pace of transformation. He is not interested in quick fixes. He is interested in eternal change, and that means consecration, because only a heart set apart can hold what He's about to pour out. Consecrate yourselves. It's not just a call to be ready, it's a declaration of worth. It's heaven saying, you are chosen, you are set apart, and I am about to move in your life. It's God reminding you that His promises are not for the casual. They are for the consecrated, not for the indifferent, but for the expectant. Close your eyes and imagine this, the Jordan River, wide and untamed, surging with the weight of spring floods. You can't see a path across, but in the distance you hear the sound of priests lifting the ark. You see the people stepping forward, hearts pounding, carrying nothing but faith. And then the impossible happens. The waters part, dry ground appears, the promise begins. What would you do if you knew tomorrow held that kind of miracle? Would you prepare differently today? Would you strip away the distractions? Would you press into prayer, into presence, into belief? Would you consecrate your steps, your words, your heart? God is calling you to believe for what you've never seen, to trust for what you've never touched. He's calling you to live as if the walls of Jericho are already trembling, as if the seas are already parting, as if the promise is already on the horizon. This is the sacred tension. Today you consecrate, tomorrow He moves. And when He moves, it will not be small. It will not be subtle. It will be amazing. 12 years, that's how long she bled, not just blood, but strength, dignity, hope. She was not just sick, she was shunned, not just unwell, but unclean. Every day a reminder of her brokenness, every morning a new wave of despair. Doctors tried, money drained, prayers turned to silence. Her body betrayed her and the crowd ignored her. She was alone in a sea of people. But then Jesus. She heard He was passing by, just a whisper perhaps, just a rumor on the wind. But it stirred something deep in her spirit that had long gone quiet. Not a shout, not even a full hope, just a flicker of defiance against despair. And in that flicker something rose, a thought reckless and raw. If I just touch the hem of His garment, I will be healed. Not maybe, not I hope, but I will. This is the holy resolve that births breakthrough. It isn't loud. It doesn't need a platform. It moves through the crowd, unnoticed by the world, but seen by heaven. She didn't wait for an invitation. She didn't ask for permission. She reached through the doubt, through the shame, through the crushing press of bodies who didn't know her pain. Every step was an act of rebellion against resignation. And then her hand touched fabric. Not His hand, not His face, just the hem, the edge, the lowest part of what He wore. That was enough, that was more than enough. In that instant, power surged, not from her, but into her. The bleeding stopped, the shame fell, the silence shattered, the years of pain unraveled in a single breath of heaven. Jesus stopped. In a sea of people, He stopped for one. He turned, searching, sensing the pull of faith. Who touched me? He asked. The disciples scoffed. Everyone is touching you, they said. But Jesus knew faith touches differently. Faith doesn't bump into God, it grabs hold of Him. Trembling, she stepped forward. afraid but seen, exposed but healed, and he didn't scold, he didn't question, he called her daughter. There's a message for you in her story. Maybe you've been bleeding for years, maybe not physically, but emotionally, spiritually. Maybe your faith has grown thin. Maybe the crowd around you has grown thick. Maybe the miracle feels like it belongs to someone else. But hear this, breakthrough doesn't come to those who wait politely at the edge. It comes to those who press. Press through the fear. Press through the failure. Press through the voices that say, you're not enough. The woman with the issue of blood didn't have a sermon, she didn't have a choir, she didn't even have a name in the story, but she had a reach, and that was enough. What is your reach today? What if it's not the eloquence of your prayers, but the desperation behind them? What if your faith doesn't need to be perfect? It just needs to stretch. Jesus is still passing by, and he still stops for those who touch him with faith. He stops for the one everyone else walks past. He turns for the one who dares to believe that even the hem of his grace is powerful enough to change everything. Your past does not disqualify you. Your pain does not exclude you. Your weakness does not repel him. In fact, it's the very thing that draws him near. Because breakthrough often begins at the end of human strength. It begins when you say, I have nothing left, but I'm still reaching. There is a crowd between you and what God has promised, a crowd of fears, a crowd of logic, a crowd of opinions, a crowd of disappointments, but you must choose to reach through them. Push past what people will think. Push past what hasn't worked before. Push past the lies that tell you the bleeding will never stop. Reach anyway, even if your hand trembles, even if your knees shake, even if all you can touch is the lowest thread of the presence of God. That thread contains the fullness of his power. That hem holds the authority of heaven. And when your faith collides with his glory, healing erupts. You don't need to shout. You don't need to explain. You just need to touch. Sometimes the greatest prayers are wordless. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs are born not in the fire of public victory, but in the quiet desperation of secret faith. She was healed before he said a word, but his words confirmed what her spirit already knew. Your faith has made you whole. Wholeness, that's the promise. Not just a moment of relief, but a lifetime transformed. He didn't just stop the bleeding, he restored her identity. Daughter, not patient, not outcast, not problem, daughter. Beloved, accepted, healed. That name is yours too. When you press through the crowd, when you touch him with faith, when you choose to believe that your moment is not behind you, it's just ahead of you. So don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait for the crowd to part. Don't wait until you have it all figured out. Reach now. Reach through the dust, the noise, the past. Your breakthrough may not shout, but it will be heard in heaven, because the hem of his garment still carries healing, and he still stops for you. Before the dawn, there is darkness. Before the rising, there is breaking. Breakthrough begins in the shatter, not in the silence of the sanctuary, but in the tearing of the veil. God does not merely move gently into your life. He often breaks in. He tears down what you built to protect yourself. Because what you call safety, he sees as prison. He shakes the ground you've stood on for too long, because that ground was never meant to carry you into the future. Breakthrough is not a soft arrival, it's a holy upheaval, a sacred storm. And it often comes uninvited, not because God is cruel, but because comfort has made you forget how to hunger. The walls around your heart, they were built to keep pain out, but they also kept healing from entering. The lies you believed about yourself, they wrapped around your mind like bandages, but they never truly healed the wound. So when God comes to bring breakthrough, he first comes to tear, to rip through the mask, the pretense, the false security. That tearing, it's mercy. It feels like loss, but it's the beginning of liberation. It feels like pain, but it's the prelude to purpose. He strips away everything that doesn't belong in the next season. The addiction to approval, the comfort of numbness, the illusion of control, all of it has to go. Not because God is trying to punish you, but because He wants you light enough to cross into promise. You cannot carry the wilderness into the land of milk and honey. It will spoil the taste. So God breaks what must be broken, and we must let Him. Isaiah 43:19 says, "See, I am doing a new thing, but the new cannot come while we cling to the old. The new cannot grow in soil already full of weeds." God is not patching up your wounds. He is performing heart surgery. He is not putting a Band-Aid on your brokenness. He is raising you to life. So yes, there will be pain. The pruning always comes before the harvest. The shaking always comes before the glory. The crushing always comes before the oil flows. Think of the olive, beaten, crushed, pressed. Only then does the oil pour out. Think of the seed, buried, broken, hidden. Only then does it grow. Think of the clay, spun, shaped, scraped. Only then does it become a vessel. You are being shaped, pressed, broken open, because you are being made into something sacred. And if you will not resist the breaking, the breakthrough will rise like the dawn. But many fight the process. They beg God for a miracle while clinging to what is killing them. They want resurrection without crucifixion. They want the promised land without leaving Egypt. But God is not mocked. He does not pour new wine into old wineskins. So He waits, not out of anger, but out of mercy. He waits until you are willing to be made new, entirely, not halfway, not part-time. He is not interested in half-healed, half-believing, half-awake children. He wants you whole, awake, fully alive. And that means surrender. True surrender, not lip service, not performance, but the deep groaning of a heart laid bare. God, I have nothing left, but You can have it all. That's where the breakthrough lives. Not in your strength, but in your surrender. Not in your talent, but in your trust. Not in your certainty, but in your openness to be undone. Because only what is laid down can be lifted up. And God is in the business of lifting up the broken. He is near to the crushed in spirit. He binds up the wounded. He breathes life into dry bones. He speaks to what has been dead for years and says, "Live." But before the breath, there is the bone. Before the voice, there is the valley. Before the praise, there is the pit. Joseph had a dream, but first he had a prison. David was anointed king, but first he ran for his life. Jesus carried resurrection, but first He carried a cross. Do not despise the breaking. It is holy. It is sacred. It is the furnace where false identities melt. It is the wilderness where voices are silenced until only God's remains. It is the dark night that gives birth to morning. And when you emerge, you won't just be blessed, you'll be transformed. You'll walk different, like Jacob after wrestling with God, limping maybe, but leaning on the one who renamed him. You'll see different, like Elisha's servant when his eyes were opened to the army of angels. You'll speak different, not with fear, but with fire, because you will have been broken, and in that breaking made whole. Do not fear the sound of your walls falling. Do not panic when the ground shifts. It's not your life unraveling, it's your chains snapping. The very pain you feel is the proof that God has not left you numb. He is awakening what was asleep. He is igniting what was barely flickering. This is not the end. It's the earthquake before the open grave. So stand in the breaking. Let it do its work. Let it crush the pride. Let it burn away the lies. Let it reveal the bedrock of truth beneath it all, that you are loved by a God who would rather break you into freedom than leave you intact in bondage. And that breakthrough, it's not coming from the outside in. It's rising from the inside out. See, I am doing a new thing. God declares through the voice of Isaiah. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? This isn't a suggestion. It's an unveiling, a cry that what was hidden is now breaking ground. A whisper that carries thunder if you have ears to hear it. The question isn't whether God is moving. He is. The question is whether you can see it. Not with your natural eyes, but with eyes anointed by faith, because the new thing doesn't always look like a miracle at first. Sometimes it looks like disappointment, like a door slammed shut, like unfamiliar soil, like exile before return. But perception is the gatekeeper of promise. What you see or fail to see determines what you will walk in. We often ask God to make a way in the wilderness, but when He starts clearing space, we panic at the sound of falling trees. We ask Him to bring rivers into the wasteland. But when the water floods the old paths, we clutch our maps and complain that nothing looks familiar anymore. But God does not work within the confines of what was. He is not a renovator of old mindsets. He is a creator of new realities. What springs up may not look like the answer you expected, but it is the answer you need. And it is here, not someday, now. Now it springs up. Now is the hour. Now is the moment. The new thing is not coming. It's already begun. But can you perceive it? Can you see the shift in the atmosphere before the rain falls? Can you sense the crack in the stone before the water gushes? Can you feel the stirring in your spirit before the breakthrough touches the ground? God doesn't always announce His movements with trumpets. Sometimes it's a seed in the soil. Sometimes it's a whisper in the noise. Sometimes it's the soft flutter of hope after years of silence. And if your perception is dulled by disappointment, you will miss it. Perceiving requires preparation. It requires intimacy. You don't perceive a baby growing unless you're close enough to the mother. You don't perceive spring unless you've survived winter. The ones who perceive the new thing are the ones who have waited in the dark with their eyes wide open. They're the ones who've refused to stop believing, who've prayed even when the words dried up, who've praised in the prison, who've planted in the drought. They are not more spiritual, they are simply more surrendered, more sensitive to the heartbeat of heaven. God says, I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. That's not poetic language. It's a supernatural promise, a way where there has never been a way. Rivers where the ground has only ever cracked and crumbled. This is the kind of God you serve, a God who refuses to be boxed in by circumstance, a God who delights in defying logic. But perception is everything. If you don't see the river, you'll keep digging in dry ground. If you don't sense the way, you'll keep circling the same mountain. Faith doesn't ignore reality, it redefines it. Faith looks at the desert and sees a garden. Faith looks at the prison and sees a platform. Faith looks at the cross and sees a crown. So what are you looking at today? What lens are you wearing? Are you staring at the past so long that your eyes can't adjust to the present? Are you fixated on the pain, blind to the healing that has already begun? Lift your eyes, not to the news, not to the noise, not to the mirror. Lift your eyes to the hills where your help comes from. Lift your eyes to the one who says, Behold, I make all things new. Because the old is passing away, the grief that gripped you is loosening its hold. The cycle that trapped you is cracking open. The lie that paralyzed you is losing power. A new thing is springing up, not with force, but with divine persistence. Like a blade of grass breaking through concrete. Like light invading the smallest crack. Like resurrection surging into what was once dead. This is not a detour, it's divine direction. This is not punishment, it's positioning. This is not chaos, it's construction. God is rebuilding you, not the way you were, but the way you were meant to be. So adjust your vision, clean the lens, ask for spiritual sight, pray like the blind man, Lord, I want to see. Not just see solutions, but see the Savior. Not just see provision, but see the provider. Because if you see Him, you'll never miss what He's doing. And if the ground feels unfamiliar, it's because it's no longer the land of your past. It's the soil of your future. You're walking in places you've never been because you're becoming someone you've never been. The river is rising. The way is opening. The new thing is here. Don't miss it. Perceive it. Celebrate it. Step into it. And know this, what God begins, He finishes. He is not starting a new thing in you just to abandon it halfway. He is not playing with your heart. He is fulfilling His word. You are the soil. He is the rain. And the new thing will grow, not by your power, not by your perfection, but by His Spirit. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Yes, Lord. We see it now. There are battles you've fought that no one knows about. Tears cried in secret, soaking your pillow in the hours when the world sleeps, but your soul cannot. Prayers whispered so faintly they were more like sighs than sentences. Nights where the silence was deafening and heaven seemed a million miles away. The world saw your smile, but God saw your struggle, and He never turned away. You felt the weight of your weakness, the gravity of your failures, the crushing burden of questions left unanswered. You've wondered if the promises spoken over your life still hold true, or if they ever did. You've questioned whether God still hears, still sees, still cares. You've walked through valleys with shadows so thick you couldn't find your own hands in front of your face, let alone the hand of God. And yet you are still standing, not because you were strong enough, but because He was. There is something sacred about the midnight hour, not just the physical one, but the spiritual one. The time when hope flickers low, when the walls feel like they're closing in, when the only sound is your own breathing, and sometimes even that feels like too much effort. But it is in that sacred midnight when no one else is watching that heaven leans close. The secret battles are the ones that shape the strongest warriors, not the ones fought on stages or applauded by crowds, but the ones waged in the stillness, in the dark, when you kept worshiping even when your voice trembled, when you kept believing even when every logical reason had burned away, when you kept moving forward, crawling if you had to, simply because you knew that giving up wasn't an option. God honors the unseen faithfulness. He collects every tear. Not one has hit the ground without being recorded. Not one groan has left your spirit without being echoed in the heart of your Savior. You are not forgotten. You are not invisible. You are being refined. He sees the fire you're walking through. He's not ignoring it. He's in it. Like the fourth man in the furnace with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He doesn't always take the fire away. Sometimes He steps into it with you, because the goal is not to escape the fire. The goal is to emerge from it changed, unbound, untouched by the flames, but forever marked by the presence of God. You may feel like you're barely holding it together, but maybe that's the point. Maybe God is allowing the breaking so that His strength, not yours, can carry you through. Remember what He said in 2 Corinthians 12:9, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." It's not your strength He's interested in. It's your surrender. He doesn't need your perfection. He desires your trust. In the kingdom of God, weakness is not a liability. It is the stage for divine strength. The weaker you are, the more space He has to move. The less you can rely on your own power, the more you are invited to lean on His. And oh, how His power never fails. In your midnight moments, when the world is silent and your soul is loud, know this: the breakthrough is being forged in the waiting, not in the burst of sudden glory, but in the long, slow obedience, in the pressing, in the persistence, in the choice to kneel even when heaven seems quiet. These are the places where real faith is formed. Not in the miracle, but in the holding on before the miracle. Not in the answer, but in the silence before the answer comes. This is where endurance is born, where intimacy with God deepens, where faith stops being a concept and starts becoming your heartbeat. He's not late. He's not ignoring you. He's not punishing you. He's preparing you. Your secret cries have echoed in heaven's chambers. Your whispered, "Help me," has been amplified before the throne. And even now he is dispatching angels, shifting seasons, aligning circumstances. You don't see it yet, but the ground beneath you is trembling. The heavens are moving. The river is rising. And the very thing you've been praying for is already on its way. But it's not just about what's coming. It's about what's being formed in you now. Because when the breakthrough arrives, it won't just deliver you. It will demand that you be ready to carry what it brings. So don't despise this secret season. It's holy. It's hidden for a reason. God does His best work in the dark. Seeds sprout underground. Diamonds form under pressure. Stars are born in silence. And faith, real, deep, unshakable faith, is forged in the fires no one sees. So press on. Keep praying. Keep believing, even when it hurts, even when it feels pointless, even when all you have is the flicker of a promise in the back of your mind. Because God has not forgotten. He is near to the brokenhearted. He saves those who are crushed in spirit. And your secret battle? It will not end in defeat. It will end in glory. The enemy cannot steal what God has declared. He does not have access to the promise, only to your perspective. He cannot remove your destiny, but he will do everything in his power to make you doubt it. He knows he cannot touch the seal God has placed on your life, so he sets his sights on something more vulnerable, your faith. Because if he can shake your faith, he can shake your walk. If he can steal your confidence, he can cloud your vision. If he can convince you that God's word was a mirage, he can keep you wandering in the wilderness long after the promised land has been opened. This is his oldest tactic, to whisper, not to scream, to whisper half-truths that sound almost holy. Did God really say? That's how it started in the garden. That's how it still starts today. You pray and the breakthrough doesn't come, he whispers. Your prayers are empty. You worship and the feelings don't follow. He whispers, your worship is wasted. You dream and face delay. He whispers, your dreams are foolish. But he's a liar, and not just a liar, the father of lies. Every word that comes from his mouth is twisted, poisoned, designed to weaken your grip on God's truth. He cannot curse what God has blessed, so he tries to convince you that the blessing doesn't exist, that the promise was never real, that the waiting is just God forgetting. But hear me, God never forgets. Not a word, not a tear, not a promise. When he speaks, his word runs like fire through history until it lands in your life with the same power that formed galaxies. When he speaks, the earth may tremble, but his covenant stands firm. Not one syllable falls to the ground, and not one enemy whisper can unwrite what God has spoken. So what is your defense? Faith. Not fluffy optimism, not blind positivity, but a resolute, battle-worn, fire-tested faith that refuses to bow. A faith that says, even if I don't see it yet, I will believe. Because faith is not a feeling, it is a weapon, and it is forged in the secret place where truth and trial collide. It is shaped when you choose to declare the promise, even while your heart breaks under the weight of silence. Faith doesn't deny the storm, it speaks to it. Faith doesn't ignore the pain, it walks through it. Faith doesn't pretend to know everything, it clings to the one who does. And this faith, it is not fragile, it does not bend to the whispers of hell, it does not collapse under the pressure of delay, it holds, it stands, it fights, not in its own strength, but in the authority of heaven. This is the kind of faith that moves mountains, the kind that makes demons tremble, the kind that unlocks the gates of heaven. So when the enemy comes, meet him not with fear, but with fire. Remind him that your foundation is not built on circumstance, it is built on Christ, that your identity is not rooted in your past, it is sealed in the blood of Jesus, that your story is not being written by doubt, it is being written by the hand of the Almighty. You were never meant to live by sight. You were made to walk by faith. And when faith speaks, heaven listens. When faith stands, hell flees. Think of the heroes of old. Hebrews 11 names them, not for their perfection, but for their faith. Abraham, who believed even when the promise seemed biologically impossible. Moses, who chose purpose over privilege. Rahab, who trusted in a scarlet cord. Gideon, who stepped into battle trembling but obedient. They were flawed. They were unsure, but they were faithful, and that made all the difference. You carry that same lineage. You walk in that same legacy, and the same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. That Spirit is not timid. That Spirit does not shrink back. That Spirit rises. So let your faith rise. Even when fear howls like a storm at midnight, even when delay stretches so long it feels like denial, even when everything in you wants to give up, let faith speak louder. Let faith burn brighter. Let faith be your anthem. Because God is not asking you to be strong, He is asking you to believe. He is asking you to trust that His character is unchanging, that His promises are unbreakable, that His word will not return void. The enemy may scream, but the shepherd's voice is stronger. The shadows may fall, but the light cannot be put out. You are not at the mercy of lies. You are anchored by truth. So dig deep. Plant your feet. Hold the line. Your faith is not small. It is not frail. It is not forgotten. It is a fire, a fortress, a force of heaven on earth. Let it burn. Let it speak. Let it silence every lie with the roar of unwavering belief. My God is faithful. My promise still stands. My breakthrough is coming. The storm rages. Waves thrash like wild beasts. Wind howls with a voice of chaos, and darkness swallows the horizon. The boat rocks violently. It is the middle of the night, and fear has taken the helm. The disciples, seasoned fishermen, are drowning in dread, not from the sea, but from the sight. Because out on the water, in the place no man should be, walks a figure, unnatural, unshaken, unbothered by the winds that roar and the waves that rise. It is Jesus, not in a boat, not standing on calm shore, but walking on the very thing they feared would consume them. Terror seizes their hearts. Is it a ghost? But then the voice, familiar, steady, piercing through the panic. Take heart, it is I, do not be afraid. And in that moment, Peter does something outrageous, illogical, beautiful. He doesn't ask for the storm to stop. He doesn't beg for the boat to stabilize. He asks only one thing. Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. Not calm the sea, not rescue me, but call me into the impossible. And Jesus says one word, come. So Peter steps out. He puts one foot over the edge of what is safe, and then another, and he walks. On water, on chaos, on what should have drowned him. For a moment, faith overtakes fear. For a moment, the impossible becomes his reality. The laws of nature bow to the law of trust, and as long as his eyes are locked on Jesus, he stands. But then, the wind reminds him. The waves rise again. He looks away. He remembers that humans don't walk on water. He doubts, and he begins to sink. Lord, save me, he cries. And immediately, Jesus reaches down, grabs his hand, and pulls him up. O you of little faith, why did you doubt? But notice, Jesus didn't let him drown. Doubt may have pulled him under, but grace pulled him back. This is your story too. You have faced storms. You have known the terror of waves that don't subside, winds that don't cease. You've seen the chaos swell, the boat crack, the darkness loom. And in those moments, everything in you screams to stay in the boat. But the voice of Jesus still speaks. Come walk on what should have destroyed you. Come walk through the grief. Come walk across the debt. Come walk over the broken dreams, the failed attempts, the sleepless nights. Come. The miracle isn't in the storm ending, it's in the faith to walk through it. It's not about the waves calming. It's about your eyes staying fixed. Because fear will always scream louder than faith until you choose to listen differently. The boat is safe, but safety never brought anyone closer to Jesus. Safety doesn't require surrender. Safety doesn't stretch your spirit. Safety keeps you surviving, but faith calls you to live. And yes, faith may falter. You may sink. You may forget the sound of his voice for a moment and lock eyes with the storm. But even then, grace. Even then, rescue. Even then, the hand of Christ reaching into the deep, lifting you higher than your failure, higher than your fear. Because it was never about walking perfectly. It was about stepping out. Jesus knew Peter would doubt, and he still said, come. He knew Peter would sink, and he still welcomed him onto the waves. Because God isn't looking for flawless courage. He's looking for willing hearts. He's not measuring the steps you take. He's rejoicing that you stepped at all. And what of the others? The 11 who stayed in the boat? They watched a miracle, but they didn't taste it. They saw the impossible, but they didn't live it. Only Peter knew what water felt like under faith-filled feet. Only Peter knew the thrill of defying gravity in obedience. Only Peter got to say, I walked where only Christ can walk. You are being called not to safety, but to surrender. To fix your eyes, not on the storm, but on the Savior. To walk, not by sight, but by trust. And when you start to sink, and you will, know this, He is still there, still reaching, still saving, still whispering, why did you doubt? Not with condemnation, but with compassion. Because He wants you to know you never needed to fear. You were always safer in the storm with Him than in the boat without Him. So step out again, even if you've failed before, even if you've sunk before, even if the winds howl louder than your memory of His voice. Step, because the waves beneath you obey the one who calls you. And if He says, come, He will make the water solid under your feet. He will hold you when your faith falters. He will walk with you even in the fiercest storm. You were not made for the boat. You were made for the water. You were made to walk in the impossible. You were made for faith. Hope can feel like a flickering star, beautiful but far, a promise spoken long ago, buried under years of delay and doubt. And when your eyes are filled with the dust of the present, the horizon of God's promise can seem like a mirage. But hope is not a fantasy, it is an anchor, and the one who holds that anchor never lets go. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. These words were not spoken in comfort. They were spoken in captivity, to a people exiled, displaced, and forgotten by men, but not by God. They had lost their land, their temple, their way of life. But God said, your future is still in my hands. And He says the same to you. Your surroundings may look like failure. The road may be overgrown with thorns. The door may be shut, locked, and rusted shut. But God does not base His plans on your circumstances. He bases them on His character. And His character is unchanging. His plans are not reactive. They are redemptive. He doesn't just see your future. He holds it, shapes it, breathes life into it, and no loss, no detour, no delay can cancel what He has declared. You may feel suspended between where you've been and where you're going, like a soul in transit, too far from the start to turn back, too far from the end to celebrate. This is the middle, the place where hope is tested. In the middle, the vision dims. In the middle, the enemy whispers. In the middle, you're tempted to settle, to say, maybe this is all there is, to exchange destiny for comfort, promise for survival. But God didn't call you to survive. He called you to live fully, freely, fearlessly, to walk in fields of purpose, not camp in shadows of doubt. When you forget the plan, remember the planner. He has never been confused. He has never lost track of your timeline. He is never late. He is always intentional. Even in the delay, even in the silence, even in the pain. Sometimes the promise takes time because you need time. Time to grow, time to unlearn, time to be healed, purified, strengthened, time to become the version of yourself that can carry the weight of what's coming. God isn't just preparing the blessing for you, He's preparing you for the blessing. The waiting is not wasted. The wilderness is not punishment. It is process. Because anything rushed is rarely ready, and your future is too important to God to be rushed. He's not interested in quick success. He's interested in eternal fruit, in roots that go deep, in a foundation that can't be shaken when the wind comes. And wind will come, storms will howl. But those who are anchored in the truth of Jeremiah 29:11 will not be moved. I know the plans I have for you. God knows what you don't. He sees around corners you can't. He hears conversations you'll never be part of. He navigates the currents of time with hands that shape the galaxies. And He says, trust me, not trust your timeline, not trust your emotions, not trust the approval of others. Trust me, because His plans are not to harm you. They are not to shame you for your detours. They are not to mock you for your delays. They are not to break you beyond repair. They are to prosper you, not just in money or fame, but in soul, in peace, in joy that laughs in the face of darkness. They are to give you a future, not one dictated by your past, but one rewritten by grace. They are to give you hope, not wishful thinking, but divine certainty. And hope changes how you walk. It straightens your spine. It lifts your chin. It sharpens your focus, because when you know there is more ahead, you stop building altars to what's behind. You stop letting fear dictate your steps. You start walking even when the path is unclear, because your spirit knows God is already at the destination. And He's waiting for you. So don't give up now. Don't trade the hope of what's coming for the comfort of what's familiar. Don't let the fog of today cloud the brightness of God's tomorrow. Lift your eyes. The star may seem distant, but it burns with holy fire, and it is leading you home. This hope, it's not empty. This future, it's not fragile, because it is held by the same hands that formed you in your mother's womb. The same voice that called light out of darkness now calls you forward. So step, even if it's small, even if it's slow. Step toward the promise, toward the light, toward the future you were born for. And when you get there, and you will look back and say, even in the waiting, He was faithful. 12 stones, rough ancient, ordinary to the eye, but to the soul that remembers, they are sacred, markers of a moment, testimonies frozen in time. When the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground, the Lord gave Joshua an instruction. Take 12 stones from the riverbed and set them where you camp. Why? So that when your children ask, what do these stones mean? You will tell them, you will remember. Because God knew people forget. We are forgetful creatures. Miracles turn into memories, then memories turn into myths, And if we're not careful, the faith that once moved mountains becomes a story we tell with nostalgia, not fire. So God said, stack the stones. Build a monument not to yourself, but to me, so that every time you walk past, your faith will be rekindled. So that when storms come, you'll remember the water that once stood still for you. So that when doubts whisper, you'll point and say, there, that's where he moved. Testimonies matter. They are anchors in a world that drifts. They are flares in the night sky when your soul loses its way. You may not always have a feeling, but you will have a stone, a moment, a memory, a miracle that marked you. You need those stones because the enemy will try to rewrite your past. He will try to tell you it was luck, that you imagined it, that it wasn't God, just coincidence. But when your stones are stacked, the lies lose power. Each one is a declaration. This is where he healed me. This is where he carried me. This is where he found me in the ashes and made me new. This is where he opened the door no man could shut. This is where I stood on the edge and the water moved. These stones, they're not for decoration, they're for war. When the battle comes and fear rises, you go back to your stones. You remember that the same God who made a way then will do it again. You remember that you've been here before and you didn't drown. But the stones weren't just for the people who crossed that day. They were for the generations to come, for the children who didn't see the sea part or the manna fall. They would see the stones and hear the stories. And in those stories, their own faith would awaken. What are the stones in your life? Have you stopped to gather them? Or did you rush past the miracle, chasing the next mountain? Because if you don't gather your stones, your memory will fade. And if your memory fades, your faith weakens. So pause. Go back to the riverbed. Pick up what God left behind for you to remember. Maybe it was the job you didn't deserve but got anyway. Maybe it was the diagnosis that reversed. Maybe it was the phone call that came just when you were about to break. Maybe it was peace in the middle of the storm, peace that made no sense except for one word, God. Mark it. Write it down. Stack the stone. Because one day you'll be back in front of a Jordan. The waters will roar. The promise will look distant. And fear will try to take the lead. But your stones will speak louder. They'll say, we've been here before. They'll say, our God doesn't change. They'll say, he who began a good work will finish it. God doesn't call you to remember because he needs the reminder. He calls you to remember because you do. Your memory is a weapon, and your story is someone else's survival guide. Don't hide your testimony. Declare it. Let your life preach louder than your words. Let your scars shine, not with shame, but with glory. The glory of a God who brings beauty from ashes, who brings life from dry bones, who brings you across on dry ground and says, now, mark the moment. Because this won't be the last river. There will be more. More crossings, more opposition, more nights when the way ahead seems closed. But if you've gathered your stones, you'll never forget what's true. That your God is still the God who parts the waters. That the promise was not a dream, it was your journey that you walked through, not because you were brave, but because you were led. And you'll tell your children, and they will tell theirs. And faith will echo through the generations. All because you stopped and said, this is where God moved. So don't rush past your breakthrough. Celebrate it. Mark it. Stack it in the open for all to see. Because the river you cross today will become the story that carries someone else tomorrow. And when the stones are too heavy to lift with hands, let your life lift them with praise. Because a heart that remembers is a heart that remains strong. 12 stones, one promise, endless reminders. He did it before. He'll do it again. Fire, the furnace, the heat that consumes everything but the truth. This is where real faith is formed. not in the calm, but in the blaze, not on the mountaintop, but in the inferno. The kind of faith that outlives circumstances, the kind that isn't based on what God does, but on who He is. Think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 young men who stood before a king, a golden idol, and a blazing furnace. They had everything to lose. The fire was real. The threat was loud. The pressure to conform was overwhelming. But their words still thunder, even if our God does not deliver us, we will not bow. Even if, that is the language of unshakable faith. Even if the healing doesn't come, even if the door doesn't open, even if the waiting stretches long and hard, even if the fire burns hotter, still we will not bow. This is not defiance born from pride. This is surrender born from trust. This is faith that has walked through too much with God to be shaken now. This is faith that knows it is better to burn with God than to live without Him. And so they stood, and into the fire they went. But they did not go alone. There, in the midst of the flames, a 4th figure appeared, not bound, not burned, walking with them in the fire, the one who is fire himself, yet never harms his own. Not only did they survive the furnace, they came out not even smelling like smoke. The ropes were the only things that burned. That's what the fire does when God walks in it with you. It burns what bound you, not to destroy you, but to deliver you. You may feel like the heat has increased, like life turned up the temperature 7 times hotter, like you're being tested beyond reason. But if you look closer, you'll find that He is there, right there in the fire. Faith like this isn't forged in theory. It's born when the idol is before you and the threat is behind you and the only way forward is trust. It's born when you've lost everything you leaned on and all that's left is the presence of God. It's born when you say, even if you don't, I still believe you can. And even if you don't move how I want, I still know you're good. Because breakthrough is not about ease. It's about endurance. It's not about comfort. It's about conviction. God is not raising a generation of spectators. He is raising warriors, priests who carry fire on their lips and steel in their spine, sons and daughters who do not bow to fear, culture, convenience, or compromise, who walk into the heat not to be destroyed, but to become a living testimony. And yes, the fire will find you, not to kill you, but to clarify you, to reveal what cannot burn, to purify what's been hiding, to refine what was always meant to shine. Gold is not afraid of fire. It embraces it because it knows the flames only make it more pure. Your faith is being purified, and when you walk through this furnace, the ropes that have tied you, addiction, fear, anxiety, people-pleasing, shame, those ropes will burn away. And the people around you, the ones watching from a distance, will have no choice but to say, surely their God is real, because the fire doesn't disprove God, it reveals Him. The furnace becomes the stage for His glory. The heat becomes the spotlight for His power. And your life becomes the evidence that He still walks with His people. So don't fear the flames. Don't beg to avoid the fire. Pray to find Him in it. Pray to walk with unshakable confidence. Pray to come out with a deeper revelation, a louder testimony, and a heart that no longer fears the heat. Because if you can worship in the fire, you'll never be bound again. If you can stand in the face of death and say, my God is able, then no enemy will ever hold you hostage again. This is the kind of faith that splits time, the kind that rewrites stories, the kind that opens eyes and raises the dead. This is the faith that breaks chains in midnight prisons, that causes walls to fall with a shout, that causes kings to bow and idols to crumble. Not because you are strong, but because the one who walks with you is. You don't need to fear what's ahead. The flames may rise, but so will your faith. The fire may burn, but it will never consume you. not when Jesus walks beside you. And when you emerge from this place, because you'll carry the smell of glory, not smoke. You'll carry the weight of testimony, not trauma. You'll carry the fire, not as a scar, but as a torch, lighting the way for others, declaring to the world, I went through the fire and found God in the flames. There is a weight to waiting, a heaviness that presses against the chest, a silence that stretches longer than the mind believes it can bear. And yet, God says in Habakkuk 2:3, though it linger, wait for it, it will certainly come and will not delay. It lingers, and still it will not delay. This is the mystery of divine timing. God is never late, though He rarely moves when we expect. The tension between not yet and soon is where faith is forged. This is where perseverance is born, not in comfort, but in longing, not in having, but in hoping. And that hope, refined in the fire of delay, becomes stronger than steel. Perseverance is not passive, it is the warfare of the faithful. It is the quiet choice to rise again, to pray again, to believe again when everything within you wants to give up. It is not the absence of doubt, it is the refusal to let doubt dictate your steps. You will not always feel brave in the waiting, but your feet can move forward anyway. You may not always feel strong, but your spirit, anchored in His promise, will hold fast. God's delays are not denials, they are divine designs. There are doors that haven't opened because the foundation beneath your feet is still being strengthened. There are prayers that haven't been answered yet because the answer would crush you if it came too soon. There are victories still on their way because the battle within you must first be won. God is not withholding, He is preparing. He is preparing you to carry the breakthrough, not just receive it. He is aligning circumstances you cannot see. He is softening hearts in places you don't have access to. He is building endurance in your spirit so that when the breakthrough comes, you don't just enjoy it, you steward it. There is a process to every promise, and the process almost always includes a waiting room. But the waiting room is holy ground. It's where idols are exposed, where motives are purified, where faith stops being theory and starts becoming breath. Because in the waiting, your trust is no longer based on outcomes, it's anchored in presence. You learn to want Him more than you want the answer. You learn to love Him not for what He can do, but for who He is. This is the kind of trust that moves mountains, not always external ones, but internal. The mountains of fear, of control, of pride. These crumble in the presence of perseverance. Do not be discouraged by the pace of heaven. God is not slow. He is exact. He is orchestrating moments that will collide in perfect timing. What looks like a delay is often just a divine intersection forming beneath the surface. You don't see it yet, but roots are growing. Streams are being carved through the rock. And when the season shifts, when the door swings open, when the promise walks into view, it will come with such clarity, such purpose, that every second of waiting will make sense. But until then, you wait. Not with arms crossed, but hands open. Not with bitterness, but with bold expectancy. You don't wait like the world waits, with anxiety, with frustration. You wait like those who know their God is faithful. Like those who've seen Him move before. Like those who remember the stones, remember the fire, remember the voice that spoke over the chaos. Wait for it, it will certainly come. You are not forgotten in the waiting. You are being fortified. Every day that passes is not wasted. It's water to the seed. It's breath to the fire. It's pressure forming the diamond. God has not changed His mind about you. He has not revised your calling. He has not edited your promise. He is still writing your story with every heartbeat, every tear, every whispered prayer in the dark. And the breakthrough? It will come. Suddenly, clearly, completely, but only when it is time, not a second before. not a moment too late. So wait. Wait with joy, not dread. Wait with faith, not fear. Wait knowing the one who promised is the one who holds the stars, commands the seas, names every storm, and still hears your smallest sigh. He will come. He will move. He will make a way. And you will stand in the place He promised, look back on the path you walked and say, it was worth the wait. The glory of God is not an abstract concept. It is not confined to the thunders of Sinai or the brilliance of Transfiguration. It is found in the obedience of one heart that says yes, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it costs, even when the path is dark and the step ahead is hidden in shadow. This is where glory breaks in, not just when the miracle arrives, but when obedience paves the way for it. God is not looking for performance. He is looking for partnership. He is not asking you to impress Him. He is asking you to trust Him. When God is about to give you a breakthrough, He often asks for a step that seems irrational, uncomfortable, contradictory to logic. Think of Noah building an ark in the middle of dry land without a cloud in the sky. Think of Abraham climbing a mountain with his only son, the knife and fire in hand, trusting that somehow God would provide. Think of Mary saying, "Let it be unto me," though her yes would mean scandal, misunderstanding, and a cross. This is obedience, trust in motion. It's not the loud declarations, it's the quiet yes in the middle of the unknown. It's not flashy, it's fierce. Because when you obey God before you see the why, you declare that His voice is more trustworthy than your own understanding, that His direction is safer than your comfort, that His will is worth more than your convenience. And it is that obedience, not talent, not effort, not resource, that invites the breakthrough. When the Israelites marched around Jericho, they didn't shout first, they walked first, silently, day after day, circling a wall that didn't even crack. No sign of progress, no evidence of breakthrough, just dust, footsteps, and obedience. But on the seventh day, after their obedience had run its course, heaven joined their shout, and the walls fell. You don't always know which step will bring the breakthrough. That's why every step matters. Every obedient moment, every act of faith, every sacrificial yes is another swing of the hammer against the unseen walls. You may feel like nothing's moving, but in the Spirit, something always is. Obedience is the act of sowing even when the field looks barren. It's pouring water into jars like the servants did in Cana, even though it's wine that's needed. It's lowering your nets after fishing all night without a single catch, just because He said to try again. And when the breakthrough comes, and it will, you'll know it wasn't your strategy. It was your surrender. God doesn't need your expertise. He doesn't wait for your perfect conditions. He waits for your willingness. Because He's not after performance, He's after intimacy. Obedience is what builds that intimacy. When you obey without full understanding, you open the door for God to reveal Himself more deeply. I will show you, He says to Abraham, the land that I will give you. But not until Abraham steps out, not until he leaves Ur, not until he says yes without a map. Many never see the breakthrough because they refuse to move until everything is clear. But faith doesn't wait for full visibility. Faith moves because the voice of the one who speaks is enough. And when you move like that, your obedience becomes an altar, a place where heaven and earth collide, a place where glory descends, a place where the impossible becomes possible. There is a cost, yes. Obedience will always cost something. It may cost relationships. It may cost reputation. It may cost comfort, plans, dreams you once held dear. But the reward, it is God Himself, His presence, His power, His purpose alive in you. And there is nothing more valuable than that. There is nothing richer than walking in step with the Spirit. So when God prompts you, move. When he whispers, listen. When he says go, do not ask for a sign, ask for courage, because every yes builds a foundation. Every yes deepens your well. Every yes becomes a brick in the road that leads to promise. And on the other side, you will find that obedience was not a burden. It was your blessing. You will look back on the strange steps, the painful sacrifices, the lonely roads, and see they were the very path to glory. God doesn't just want to give you a breakthrough, He wants to walk with you through it. He doesn't just want to bless you, He wants to transform you, and He will, if you will obey. So choose the way that doesn't make sense. Choose the road that's narrow. Choose the command that seems too big for you, because it is. But grace will meet you. Power will carry you. And God will be glorified in you. This is the sacred rhythm of breakthrough. Not hustle, not striving, but surrender, obedience. Glory, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the same God who split the sea for Moses, who sent fire for Elijah, who shut the mouths of lions for Daniel. He has not changed. His arm is not shorter. His voice is not weaker. His promise is not obsolete. The same God who walked with them walks with you. Do not let time convince you otherwise. Do not let culture dilute the reality of who He is. His nature is eternal. His word is unshakable. His character is steadfast. He is not bound by centuries or shifting opinions. What He did, He still does. And what He promised, He will fulfill. The world has changed, but God has not. The news cycles churn. Kingdoms rise and fall. Voices grow louder, distractions multiply, and doubts creep in like fog. But He remains steady, present, unmoved. He is the I am, not the I was, not the I might be, but the eternal, present tense, ever speaking, ever moving, ever ruling God of heaven and earth. And if He was faithful then, He is faithful now. Think of Moses, standing at the edge of the Red Sea, Pharaoh's army behind, nothing but water ahead. Logic said, this is the end. Faith said, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. And God moved, the waters split, dry ground appeared. Israel walked through what had once been impassable. That same power walks with you today. Think of Elijah, drenched altar before him, prophets of Baal surrounding him, the crowd waiting to see if God would show up. He didn't panic, he didn't manipulate, he simply prayed, and fire fell, heaven touched earth. The God of glory answered by flame. That same fire burns within you. Think of Daniel, surrounded by lions, sentenced to death for prayer. He chose obedience over safety, integrity over compromise, and God shut the mouths of beasts, because nothing has authority over those covered by His hand. That same protection covers you. This is not mythology, this is not metaphor, this is testimony, and it continues in you. Because the God of Scripture is not confined to its pages. He is living and active, still performing miracles, still delivering, still healing, still speaking, still moving. And He still uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Shh. You are not the exception to His faithfulness. You are the extension of it. The same Spirit that hovered over the waters in Genesis now dwells in you. The same power that raised Christ from the grave now pulses through your veins. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are not left to figure this out alone. You are part of the same covenant, the same promise, the same family. When you pray, the same heaven listens. When you stand, the same angels surround. When you step into the fire, the same God steps in with you. You are not just reading about history. You are standing in the legacy of the living God. So when the enemy tells you it's too late, remind him that Abraham had a child when it was biologically impossible. When he tells you you're outnumbered, remind him that Gideon defeated an army with 300 men in the favor of God. When he tells you you're too broken, remind him that Rahab had a past, but also had a place in the lineage of Christ. God does not see what the world sees. He does not choose based on resume or reputation. He chooses based on heart, on hunger, on faith. So let your heart burn again. Let the stories of old become the strength of now. Read Scripture not as a book of what was, but as a mirror of what is possible. You are walking with the God of creation. You are speaking with the voice that calmed the storm. You are covered by the blood that conquered death. And if God did it for them, He will do it for you. Not because you are worthy, but because He is faithful. He will not let His name be mocked. He will not let His promises go unfulfilled. He will not abandon what He began. The God who met Moses in a bush still meets people in ordinary places. The God who thundered from Sinai still whispers in your prayer closet. The God who led by cloud and fire still leads you by His Spirit. The God who stood in the furnace still walks through your trials. You do not need to invent your own strength. You need only remember His. This is why the testimony matters. This is why the Word is alive, because it tells you not just who God was, but who He is. Today, right now, with you, for you, moving in ways you cannot yet see. Preparing breakthroughs you didn't know you needed. Defending you from battles you didn't even know were being waged. So lift your eyes. You are surrounded by the cloud of witnesses. You are backed by the Lord of hosts. You are filled with the Spirit of Christ, the same God, yesterday, today, and forever. Let your heart declare it. Let your life prove it. Let your breakthrough be the next chapter in His endless story of faithfulness. Sometimes, before the promise can arrive, God must rearrange your life, not to punish you, but to position you. He begins to close doors that once seemed good. He removes people who once felt essential. He ends assignments, shifts seasons, breaks patterns. It may feel like loss, but it is divine realignment. Heaven's hand gently moving pieces you thought were fixed. He is not destroying your world. He is refining your foundation. He is not being cruel. He is being intentional. Because what's coming requires a different circle, a deeper root, a clearer focus. Before every major breakthrough in Scripture, there was a sifting, a cutting, a reordering. Abraham had to leave everything he knew. Joseph had to lose his coat, his family, his freedom, before stepping into the palace. David had to run from Saul before sitting on the throne. And Jesus, the Son of God, had to walk alone into Gethsemane before rising in victory. When God begins to realign you, it rarely feels like a promotion. It often feels like rejection. But what feels like rejection is often God's protection. What feels like delay is His mercy. He's removing what you've leaned on so you can stand in the fullness of what He's called you to. We hold on to what's familiar because it's safe, predictable. But comfort zones are not calling zones. If you want to walk on water, you have to leave the boat. If you want to cross into the promised land, you have to stop mourning over Egypt. And that's where the challenge comes. We mourn over the things God is pruning. We weep over doors that close, friendships that faded, opportunities that disappeared. We question Him. Why would you take this from me? And the heavens seem silent. But He is not absent. He is working. He is guarding you from distractions that would have derailed your purpose, from relationships that were never meant to carry the weight of your next season, from dreams that looked good but would have buried you beneath the applause. He knows what you don't. He sees what you can't. He is guiding with a wisdom deeper than your understanding. So let Him align you. Let Him rearrange what needs to be shifted. Stop trying to hold open doors He has shut. Stop running after what He's already removed. Stop grieving what He's pruned and trust the gardener. In John 15, Jesus said, "The Father is the gardener. Every branch that bears fruit He prunes." Why? So it can bear more fruit. Pruning is not punishment, it's preparation. It's the careful hand of God cutting back the overgrowth to make room for abundance. You may feel like things are falling apart, but what if they're falling into place? You may feel like you're losing, but what if God is trading your good for His great? He knows how to position you for impact. He knows how to isolate you to incubate your purpose. Some of the most significant transformations happen in hiddenness, in the wilderness, in the cave, in the quiet. David's crown was not forged in the palace, it was shaped in the shadows. Moses was not prepared in Pharaoh's courts, he was molded in Midian's solitude. Jesus didn't launch His ministry in the temple, but in the wilderness where He fasted, prayed, and faced down the enemy. You're not being overlooked. You're being refined. You're not being punished. You're being repositioned. And when the shift is complete, when the realignment settles, you will step into rooms you didn't apply for. You will receive favor you didn't campaign for. You will carry influence you didn't manufacture. Because you will have been placed, not by man, but by God. When God aligns something, no man can misplace it. When God opens a door, no force of hell can shut it. When God establishes you, you won't need to defend yourself. You won't need to hustle for validation. You'll walk with quiet authority, rooted in the knowledge that you are where you are meant to be. That's the power of divine positioning. But it begins with surrender. It begins with letting go of your plan to embrace His purpose. It begins with trusting His timing, even when you don't understand His methods. So let the doors close. Let the people walk. Let the season shift. And instead of asking, "Why is this happening?" ask, "Lord, what are you preparing me for?" That simple question changes everything. It transforms pain into purpose. It turns confusion into clarity. It takes you out of survival and places you into destiny. Because your life is not random, your journey is not accidental. Every move is intentional. Every step is choreographed. He is aligning the path beneath your feet with the calling He placed inside your soul. And when the day comes, and it will when you step into what He's been preparing you for, you'll look back and see that every closed door was a kindness. Every ending was a beginning. Every removal was a release. You'll see that the shaking was not to scatter you, but to settle you. You'll see that you were never being abandoned. You were always being aligned. You cannot step into promise while clinging to the past. Faith requires release. Letting go is not weakness, it is worship. It is the sacred surrender of what once served you but can no longer sustain you. There are things God blessed for a season that He now asks you to lay down for the next. Even Abraham had to let go. God promised him a future, but to receive it he had to leave his present, leave his father's house, leave the land of comfort, leave the identity he had always known. All he had was a word, a whisper from God, and a choice: cling to what was or trust the God of what's to come. Faith is not built on familiarity, it is built on trust. And trust doesn't cling, trust releases. It's easy to say we believe until God says, let it go. Let go of the place that's no longer feeding your spirit. Let go of the bitterness that's grown roots in your soul. Let go of the relationship that's not aligned with your calling. Let go of the fear that has become your compass. Let go of the plan you built without God's breath in it. God doesn't ask you to let go to harm you. He asks you to let go so you can be free, so you can take hold of the new thing He's prepared. But your hands can't be full of old when He's trying to place the new. Think of the Israelites. God delivered them from Egypt, from slavery, from chains, but Egypt still lived in their hearts. And when the wilderness stretched too long, they cried out for the very place they once begged to escape. That's what happens when we don't release. We start romanticizing the place that almost killed us. We forget the pain and remember only the comfort. We want the blessing of the future, but we keep reaching back to the bondage of the past. But God is not calling you backward. He is calling you forward. Forward into purpose. Forward into healing. Forward into breakthrough. You cannot take old mindsets into new seasons. You cannot carry offense into a land of peace. You cannot drag insecurity into a place of confidence. You cannot carry Egypt into Canaan. The letting go is painful, yes. It feels like loss. It feels like death. But it is sacred because resurrection only comes after the grave. And the moment you lay down what God has asked you to release, you make room for His resurrection power to move. This is why Paul said, "I count everything as loss compared to the surpassing worth of knowing Christ." He let go of his status, his identity, his credentials, because knowing Jesus was worth it all. You're not just letting go of a thing. You're letting go of your need to control the outcome. You're letting go of your timeline, your expectations, your way, and in return, you gain something unshakable. Him, His peace, His direction, His presence. And His presence is always better, always more satisfying than the thing you're mourning. The enemy will try to convince you that what you're losing is too great, that what God is asking is unfair, that if you let go, you'll be left empty. But God never takes without giving back more than you imagined. He is not trying to empty your life. He is trying to fill it. But He will not compete with idols. He will not force His blessing into clenched fists. Letting go is your declaration. God, I trust You more than I trust this thing I've held on to. You are better. You are enough. It's not about being fearless. It's about choosing faith even while your heart trembles. Like Peter stepping out of the boat. Like the disciples dropping their nets. Like the woman with the alabaster jar, breaking what was precious to pour it out in worship. Each act of release was an act of worship. Each step of surrender led to a divine encounter. This is how the kingdom of God works. You lose to gain. You die to live. You give up to rise. So what is God asking you to release? What are you still clinging to that cannot go where He's calling you? Is it a version of yourself that was rooted in survival, not identity? Is it a relationship that's comforting but compromising your calling? Is it a timeline that's become an idol? Is it a narrative you've written that doesn't include the twists God wants to redeem? Let it go. Not because it was evil, but because it's over. Not because it wasn't beautiful, but because there's something more. The seed must fall into the ground and die before it bears fruit. The branch must be pruned before it multiplies. The old wineskin must be discarded before the new wine can be poured. And your breakthrough? It is waiting on the other side of obedience. It's not being withheld. It's being prepared. But preparation begins with release. So open your hands, loosen your grip, breathe deep, and say the words that open the floodgates of heaven. Not my will, but yours. Then watch as the letting go becomes your launching pad. Watch as heaven fills every space that surrender clears. Watch as the ashes give way to beauty. Watch as the wilderness gives way to rivers. Because what God has for you is not behind you. It's ahead. And it's more glorious than you've dared to imagine. You are not alone. You never have been, even when the room is silent and the sky is still. Even when your heart aches and your strength is gone. Even when no one sees the war inside your mind, He sees. He knows. And more than that, He is with you. Not watching from a distance, but living within you. The same Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. This is not poetic, it is not symbolic, it is power. A present, pulsing, holy power that does not wait for your perfection to move. It moves in your surrender. It doesn't demand eloquence, it doesn't need clarity. It simply needs space. space in your heart, space in your mind, space in your choices, space to breathe, to lead, to move. And when He moves, everything shifts. The Spirit within you is not passive, it is not weak, it is not fragile, it is fire, it is breath, it is wind that cannot be controlled, yet always knows where it's going. We live in a world that values performance, that rewards outward success, that defines breakthrough as accolades, applause, and platforms. But the Spirit doesn't measure like man. The Spirit values fruit, not fame, wholeness, not hype, depth, not display. So do not measure your breakthrough by the standards of the world. Your breakthrough might not come with headlines. It might not come with cheers. It might come quietly, in the soft transformation of your mind, in the healing of an old wound, in the courage to speak truth where you once stayed silent. And yet, it will be no less supernatural. The Spirit's work is often hidden, but it is never small. A whisper that silences a lifetime of shame, a nudge that pulls you back from the edge, a peace that defies logic, a strength that stands up inside you when everything around you collapses. That's the Spirit. Not distant, not reserved for pastors and prophets, but present in you, teaching, guiding, correcting, empowering, reminding you who you are and whose you are. You are not just a person with a past and a prayer. You are a vessel of divine presence. When you walk into a room, you carry the very atmosphere of heaven. When you speak, the Spirit speaks through you. When you pray, the heavens lean in to listen, not because of your volume, but because of your authority. And that authority, it doesn't come from degrees or titles. It comes from knowing whose name you bear. The enemy fears Spirit-filled believers, not because they're loud, but because they're rooted, because they don't flinch in the fire, because they know their strength is not their own. You are stronger than you think, not because of what you've done, but because of who lives inside you. And that power, it doesn't run dry. It doesn't wear out. It doesn't expire at midnight. It is always present, always available, always more than enough. But you must yield, not strive, not push, yield. Like a branch abiding in the vine, like a sail catching the wind. You don't force the Spirit to move. You make room for Him to move. And He will, in your work, in your rest, in your weakness, especially in your weakness. Because His power is made perfect, not in your success, but in your surrender. The world chases strength that looks like confidence. The Spirit gives strength that looks like humility, quiet, deep, unshakable resolve that says, even here, even now, I believe. It is this Spirit that raises dry bones, this Spirit that makes wilderness into gardens, this Spirit that lifts your head when shame tells you to hide, this Spirit that groans with you in prayer when your words fall short. This Spirit is your breakthrough, not just the moment your circumstances change, but the power that sustains you until they do. And even if they don't, He remains. The Spirit within you is not seasonal, it is eternal. So stop waiting for a sign outside and listen for the stirring inside. The river of living water isn't flowing from heaven down, it's flowing from your belly out. It's already within you. The light isn't coming to you, it's rising within you. The breakthrough isn't something you chase, it's something you release. Every time you trust instead of fear, every time you love instead of resent, every time you speak instead of shrink, you are releasing the Spirit's power in you. And that's how atmospheres change. That's how families shift. That's how cities awaken. It starts not with a megaphone, but with a vessel. Not with lightning in the sky, but with a fire in your soul. So let it burn. Let Him move. Let the Spirit lead you. Your breakthrough isn't just a destination. It's a person. And He's already here. There's a sacred silence that hovers before the breakthrough, a holy hush that presses in when your striving has ceased, when your prayers have grown still, when all you have left is expectancy and breath. This is not absence, this is not abandonment, this is divine suspense. God is not idle in the quiet, He is preparing. Like a master builder working behind closed doors, the Father is shaping something exquisite in the unseen. What feels like a pause is really a process. And though your ears hear nothing, your spirit knows. He's near. You may feel pressed on every side, pressed by questions, pressed by limitations, pressed by disappointments and delays, but pressed does not mean crushed. In the kingdom of God, pressure precedes power. The pressing is purposeful. It draws out the oil. It produces the wine. You are not being punished in the silence. You are being preserved. You are being prepared. And your breakthrough, though invisible to the eye, is growing louder in the spirit. It is not a flicker on the horizon. It is a storm of glory gathering strength in the secret place. Soon it will burst forth. But for now, God invites you into stillness, into trust. Be still and know that I am God. Stillness is not passivity, it is posture. It is the decision to rest in the sovereignty of the One who holds all things. It is the refusal to let fear dictate the pace of your heart. It is worship in its purest form. Because when you are still, your ears open, your heart leans in, the distractions fall away, and you remember that the breakthrough is not the point. He is. What God is doing in you is not fragile. It will not fade because of a delay. His plan is not derailed by your questions. His promise is not dependent on your perfection. His breakthrough is not earned by performance. It is received through presence. You don't have to force the door open. You don't have to make it happen. The weight of the outcome is not on your shoulders. It rests in the hands of the God who spoke the universe into motion. So rest, not because the battle is over, but because the victory is certain. Not because you have it all figured out, but because He already does. Let gratitude become the rhythm of your waiting. Thank Him for what He's done. Thank Him for what He's doing, even if you can't see it. Thank Him for the promise that stands, even when your strength doesn't. Gratitude in the waiting is like incense on the altar. It rises. It moves the heart of God. It says, I trust you even when it hurts. I worship you even in the void. Let this gratitude be your declaration. He is good. He is near. He is working. You are not forgotten. You are not delayed. You are on the edge of divine fulfillment. The silence is the prelude to a sound that will shift the atmosphere. The stillness is the womb of something sacred. God is not just preparing a breakthrough for you, He is preparing you for the breakthrough. So don't resist the quiet. Lean into it. Let it cleanse your heart of hurry. Let it purge your mind of doubt. Let it reset your soul to the frequency of heaven. Because soon the stillness will break. And when it does, it will not be a whisper. It will be a trumpet. It will be the sound of chains falling. It will be the roar of dead things rising. It will be the flood of everything He promised, rushing into your reality like a river. And you will know it was never about the breakthrough. It was about becoming the kind of person who could carry it, who could steward it, who could turn it into testimony. Because breakthrough is not an end point. It is a beginning. It is the birth of a new season, a new strength, a new song. And your silence, it was never empty. It was full. Full of His presence, full of His breath, full of His power. It just needed time. But now the time is coming. Now the heavens are opening. Now the winds are shifting. Now the ground is trembling. Now the Spirit is stirring. And the same God who was quiet is about to speak. The same God who was still is about to move. The same God who felt far is about to reveal Himself in glory. So lift your eyes. Straighten your back. Let your spirit stand in holy expectation. Your breakthrough is not a flicker. It is a flame. It is not a whisper. It is a wind. And it will not be stopped, not by fear, not by doubt, not by delay. It is coming. It is near. It is yours. There comes a moment when faith is no longer a quiet hope. It becomes a fire. It no longer whispers. It roars. It no longer tiptoes in the shadows. It stands unshaken on the battleground, eyes fixed on the hills, heart anchored in glory. This is that moment, the culmination of surrender, the birthing of breakthrough. You were not made to survive, child of God. You were made to overcome. Every trial that tried to bury you, every lie that sought to silence you, every detour that looked like delay, they were all preparing you for this. The shaking was not to break you. It was to shake loose the things that could not go with you into your next season. You have been forged in the fire, but you are not scorched. You are radiant, refined, ready. The enemy wanted you to think this was the end, that the silence meant defeat, that the breaking meant abandonment. But the enemy never understood the nature of your God. He thought the cross was the end, but resurrection was always coming. He thought the wilderness would bury you, but God was preparing you for promise. You are standing now on the threshold of something sacred. You may not see it with your eyes, but your spirit knows it. The air has shifted. The ground beneath you feels different. You were once walking in sorrow. Now you're rising in strength. Not because everything is fixed, but because you know who your God is. He is the God who parts the waters, the God who brings water from rock, who makes a way in the wilderness, who prepares a table in the presence of your enemies. And He is doing it again for you right now. The heavens are not closed. They are thunderous with movement. Angelic assignments have been released. Doors are being opened. Chains are breaking. Heaven is responding to your faith, not because of your merit, but because of His mercy. You didn't earn this breakthrough. You received it by grace through faith. And this breakthrough, it is not small. It will not be quiet. It will be a fire that lights others. It will be a testimony that reverberates through generations. Because when God moves, He doesn't move halfway. He moves in fullness. He moves in glory. He moves with the weight of eternity in every word. And when the breakthrough hits your life, it will shake the structures that once stood in defiance of His will. It will silence the voices that mocked your obedience. It will elevate you not for applause, but for assignment. You were not just called to receive the breakthrough. You were called to carry it, to steward it, to let it become the river that flows through your life into the dry places of others. Because your breakthrough is not just about you. It is about the kingdom. It is about the children watching you pray when nothing made sense. It is about the generations behind you who will walk easier because you chose to war in the Spirit. It is about your neighborhood, your church, your nation, seeing the glory of God through the testimony of your life. You were chosen for this. Before the foundation of the world, this moment was set in motion. Your tears were counted. Your prayers were bottled. Your praise in the dark, it was a weapon, and heaven took note. The God who numbers the stars and calls them by name, He has called you, not to remain stuck, not to live half full, but to rise, to run, to declare His goodness in the land of the living. So don't hold back now. Don't shrink. Don't apologize for the weight of glory that is coming upon your life. Walk in it. Speak it. Shout it from the rooftops if you must. Your Redeemer lives. Your Deliverer is strong. Your God is faithful. And the world will see it, not because you forced a moment, but because you waited for His move. And now it's here. This is not the end. This is the launching, the catapulting, the divine explosion of purpose into motion. From this moment on, you walk different. Not in pride, but in power. Not in fear, but in fire. You are no longer begging for scraps of hope. You are overflowing with rivers of living water. The chains are broken. The grave clothes are off. The waiting has produced the weight. The fire has produced the faith. And now you rise, not as one who almost made it, not as one who barely held on, but as one who overcame by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of your testimony, by the faithfulness of the God who never left, never gave up, never stopped speaking breakthrough over your life. So lift your head, square your shoulders. Let your steps resound with purpose. The breakthrough has come, and the glory that follows will be more than you ever imagined. For the one who began a good work in you, he is faithful to complete it. Now and forever. Amen.